Some men build empires, others conquer hearts. Aristotle Onassis did both, and in the end lost everything that truly mattered. The man who once commanded the largest private shipping fleet in the world, who married a president's widow, who turned a Greek refugee's determination into billions, spent his final years broken by a tragedy money couldn't prevent. This is the story of how the world's most famous billionaire discovered that all the wealth in the world can't protect you from life's cruelest blows. The burning of Smyrna. September 1922. 16-year-old Aristotle Onassis stood on the deck of a ship watching his birthplace burn. Smyrna, the cosmopolitan port city where he'd grown up speaking 4 languages and attending prestigious schools, was being consumed by flames as Turkish forces recaptured it from Greek control. The Great Fire of Smyrna wasn't just burning buildings. It was incinerating the Onassis family's fortune, their property holdings, their entire world. Born on January 20th, 1906, in the Karatas suburb of Smyrna, Aristotle had grown up in comfort. His father, Socrates Onassis, was a successful tobacco merchant and shipping entrepreneur with a modest fleet of ships. The family belonged to the city's prosperous Greek community, and young Aristotle attended the local evangelical Greek school, where he learned Greek, Turkish, Spanish, and English by age 16. The future looked bright for a boy with such advantages. Then history intervened. After World War I, Smyrna had become part of Greece. But the Greco-Turkish War of 1919 to 1922 changed everything. When Turkish forces retook the city in September 1922, they set it ablaze. The catastrophe was devastating for the city's Greek population. 3 of Aristotle's uncles, an aunt, her husband, and their daughter, were burned to death in a church in Akhisar, where 500 Christians had sought shelter from the advancing fire. The Asia Minor catastrophe of 1922 transformed the Onassis family from comfortable merchants into refugees, fleeing with whatever they could carry. The family escaped to Greece, settling in Athens with hundreds of thousands of other Greek refugees from Asia Minor. They had survived, but they'd lost nearly everything. The property, the business connections, the security, all of it gone in smoke and chaos. For young Aristotle, watching his world collapse around him, the lesson was clear and brutal. Nothing is permanent, nothing is safe. The only thing you can rely on is yourself. But there was something else. In losing everything, Aristotle discovered he had nothing left to lose. That liberation, combined with the desperation of a refugee who'd tasted wealth and couldn't bear poverty, created a dangerous combination. A hunger that would drive him to rebuild not just what his family had lost, but to build an empire that would dwarf anything his father had imagined. Within a year, Socrates Onassis had resisted at first, but eventually supported his 16-year-old son's decision to leave Greece and start fresh in Argentina. On August 21, 1923, Aristotle landed in Buenos Aires with $250 in his pocket and a Nansen passport, the document issued to stateless refugees. He had no connections, no guarantees, no backup plan, just ambition and the understanding that he'd already survived the worst: Buenos Aires and the birth of a tycoon. Buenos Aires in 1923 wasn't kind to Greek refugees. Aristotle took whatever work he could find, starting as a hod carrier and dishwasher before landing a job with the British United River Plate Telephone Company as a night shift switchboard operator. The position paid poorly, but it gave him something far more valuable than money. It gave him information. Working the night shift left his days free, and Aristotle used that time to help revive his family's tobacco business. His father and uncle had already founded a tobacco export business in Piraeus, and they began sending Turkish tobacco to Argentina. But young Aristotle needed customers, and Argentine cigarette manufacturers weren't interested in meeting with a teenage refugee. That's when his switchboard position became his secret weapon. Working nights, Aristotle EEs dropped on business calls. He learned about deals being made, contracts being negotiated, opportunities emerging. He used that insider knowledge to set up deals of his own, operating as an important businessman during the day, music, while still working the phone lines in coveralls at night. His big break came in the mid-1920s when he overheard a conversation about a new talking picture where the main character would smoke cigarettes. Aristotle immediately grasped the marketing opportunity. If smoking was about to become glamorous in the new medium of film, cigarette sales would explode. He needed a brand that women would aspire to smoke, something elegant and sophisticated. He approached Juan Gauna, owner of Argentina's most successful cigarette company, stalking him for days until Gauna finally agreed to talk. The audacity worked. Gauna placed an immediate order for $10,000 worth of Turkish tobacco from the Onassis family business. Then Aristotle took another bold step. He created his own cigarette brand, Music, aimed specifically at women whose smoking habits were changing as the feminist movement and women's emancipation gained momentum in the interwar period. For his brand ambassador, he persuaded the famous opera singer Claudia Musio to publicly smoke his cigarettes. The campaign was brilliant. By age 25, Aristotle Onassis was a music millionaire, earning over $100,000 from tobacco commissions alone. The Greek government, recognizing his business acumen, made him consul general and asked him to negotiate a trade agreement with Argentina in 1928. He obtained Argentine citizenship in 1929. But Aristotle's ambition didn't stop at tobacco. In 1932, the same year his father died, he made an observation that would change his life. The shipping magnates who hauled the tobacco made more money than the cigarette manufacturers. And 1932, in the depths of the Great Depression, was exactly the wrong time to enter the shipping business, which meant it was exactly the right time for someone willing to take risks. While everyone else was fleeing the shipping industry, Aristotle bought 6 freight ships for less than half their normal cost. Other businessmen thought he was insane. The global economy had collapsed. International trade had plummeted. Who buys ships when nobody's shipping anything? But Aristotle understood something they didn't. The depression wouldn't last forever. When the economy recovered, there would be massive demand for shipping and ship prices would skyrocket. By buying when everyone else was selling, he positioned himself to dominate when the market turned. It was a gamble that would have ruined most men. For Onassis, it was the foundation of an empire, World War II, and the supertanker revolution. In 1938, Aristotle commissioned his first oil tanker. By the time World War II broke out, he owned 3. Then he made another brilliant, if morally questionable, decision. He registered his fleet of cargo ships to Panama, giving him tax-free status and dramatically reducing his overhead costs. This made him one of the lowest-cost shipping merchants in the world. During the war, he leased his tankers and other vessels to the Allies. The arrangement was enormously profitable. The Allies' music desperately needed shipping capacity, and Aristotle offered reduced prices on military equipment in exchange for favorable contracts and protection. His fleet grew while others' fleets were being sunk by German U-boat. After the war ended, Aristotle purchased 23 surplus Liberty ships from the United States at bargain prices. Then he embarked on the strategy that would make him legendary in the shipping industry. If you want to transport oil economically, you need bigger ships, much bigger ships. In 1954 alone, he commissioned 17 supertankers. These weren't just large ships. They were revolutionary in scale, capable of transporting massive quantities of oil, more efficiently than anything previously built. The economics were staggering. A supertanker could be paid for with a single 6-month lease, meaning the remaining 20 years of the ship's lifespan generated almost pure profit. During the Arab-Israeli Wars in 1956 and 1967, when the Suez Canal closed, Aristotle's supertankers reaped immense profits, Music transporting oil from the Middle East via the Cape of Good Hope route. While other shipping companies struggled with the longer journey, Aristotle's supertankers made the economics work. By the early 1950s, Aristotle Onassis commanded a fleet larger than the navies of many countries. He was one of only 2 men in the world to own a private airline, the other being Howard Hughes of TWWA. His Olympic Airways, acquired in 1957, became known for its golden era of service quality, with gold-plated utensils and candles in first class, and cutting-edge technology like the Comet 4B jets he purchased in 1959. He fought Prince Rainier III for economic control of Monaco through his ownership of the Soye de Bondaire, which owned the Monte Carlo casino and resort properties. He bought the Greek island of Scorpios for 3.5 million dramas, transforming it into a private paradise. His yacht, the Christina, named after his daughter, became one of the most famous vessels in the world, serving as his permanent residence and floating palace where the world's elite gathered. But all this wealth, all this power, all this success couldn't prepare Aristotle Onassis for what came next. Because while he was building an empire, he was also building a family that would bring him both his greatest joy and his most devastating pain: family and the first marriage. On December 28, 1946, 40-year-old Aristotle Onassis married Athena Mary Tina Lianos. She was 17 years old. Tina was the daughter of Stavros G. Livanos, himself a shipping magnate, which made the marriage both a love match and a strategic alliance between two powerful Greek shipping families. For Aristotle, marrying into the Livanos family was more than fulfilling his romantic ambitions. It was a blow to his father-in-law and the old-money Greek traditionalists who had always held Onassis in low esteem. They saw him as a jumped-up refugee, a clever operator without proper breeding or connections. By marrying Tina Lianos, Aristotle forced them to accept him as family. The couple had 2 children, both born in New York City. Alexander arrived on April 30th, 1948, the same day his father launched an 18-ton tanker, the biggest then built in the United States. 5 years later, young Alexander launched a 45-ton tanker in Germany, smashing a champagne bottle against the Tina Onassis, named after his mother. Christina was born on December 11th, 1950. For a time, the family projected an image of wealth and happiness. The children took part in grand ceremonies for the fleet new acquisitions. They traveled between magnificent properties. They wanted for nothing money could buy, but underneath the surface, music cracks were already forming. By the mid-1950s, Aristotle and Tina were living separately. According to Onassis biographer Peter Evans, the beginning of the end came when Tina found Aristotle in bed with a friend of hers at their home in Caponte, music the Château d'Ecro. The betrayal shattered whatever remained of their marriage. But Aristotle's infidelity wasn't casual. He had already met the woman who would become the love of his life, the one relationship that would consume him entirely and never fully end. Her name was Maria Callas, and she was the most famous opera singer in the world. Maria Callas, The Great Love Affair. Summer 1957, Venice, Italy. At a party hosted by the famous gossip columnist Elsa Maxwell, music Aristotle Onassis met Maria Callas for the first time. Later, he commented to a friend that there was a natural curiosity between them. After all, they were the most famous Greeks alive in the world. Maria Callas, born in New York in December 1923 to Greek immigrants, had risen to become opera's greatest soprano. Her voice, her dramatic interpretations, her presence on stage, all of it was legendary. She had reinvented opera for the modern age, bringing emotional intensity and theatrical brilliance that audiences had never seen before. Critics lauded her performances, audiences worshipped her, and the opera world considered her irreplaceable. At the time of their meeting, Callas Music was married to Giovanni Battista Meneghini, an Italian industrialist 30 years her senior, who also served as her manager. The marriage had given her Italian citizenship in 1949 and provided the stability she needed to establish herself in Italy during the prime years of her career. Meneghini controlled her schedule, her finances, and much of her life, but he had also supported her when she needed it most. Aristotle was still married to Tina, though their relationship had deteriorated into a facade maintained for appearances and the children. The attraction between Aristotle and Maria was immediate, but it would take 2 years before it exploded into the open. In 1959, Aristotle invited Callis and Meneghini for a 3-week Mediterranean cruise aboard his yacht, the Christina. Other illustrious guests included former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and his wife, though Callis later remarked that she found Churchill boring. The cruise was supposed to be a sophisticated social gathering among the elite, a carefully curated display of wealth and culture. Instead, it became the beginning of the most public, tempestuous love affair of the decade. From the beginning, the romance was complicated. Callis initially found Onassis over-attentive and unattractive, but his persistent courtship gradually won her over. He pursued her with single-minded determination, using all his considerable charm and the romantic setting of the yacht journey to break down her resistance. For Aristotle, Callis represented something he'd never truly had, someone whose music fame matched his own, someone who understood what it meant to be at the pinnacle of achievement, someone whose Greek heritage connected to his own identity in ways no one else could match. For Maria, Aristotle offered escape from a career that had become increasingly difficult. She was suffering from vocal problems and neurological issues that made performing painful. The scandals surrounding her temperamental behavior and the alleged rivalry with soprano Renata Tebaldi had taken their toll. The relentless pressure of maintaining her status as opera's greatest diva music was exhausting her. Aristotle offered a way out, a chance to fulfill her life as a woman, rather than as a voice in service to art. By the time the 1959 cruise ended, it was evident to everyone aboard, including the alarmed crew and the other guests, that Aristotle and Maria had fallen completely in love. Their daily encounters had ignited passions that neither could hide. Tina Lavano